Jnanatimandasya chansnasaka sakshvanritamina tasmai skrovena. Namo Vishnupaya Krishnapastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityananda. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravanya Pachami Nirvishesha Srimavandi Paskachami Bhutapani Prabhupada Nathan. So text 30. 30 is a very important verse. It instructs us the consciousness and the consciousness, the mindset and the intelligence by which we should engage in Krishna consciousness, do activities in Krishna consciousness. So we must learn the art how to act in Krishna consciousness, and this art is summarized here in this verse. Therefore, that this verse point, Prabhupada says in the purport, this verse clearly indicates the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita, so we can understand how important this verse is. Mai Sarvani, just Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mai Sarvani Karmani Sanyasatyatma Setasam. Nirasya Nirmamam Bhutva Yutvasva Vyatashvaya. Therefore, O Arjun, surrender all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims of proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. So, this verse, Krishna says, first, do all your work for me. That's the first thing, that surrender your work to me. How to do that, how to surrender your work to Krishna, doing your work for Krishna, is knowing that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Knowledge of Krishna, and that Krishna is the Isha, is the controller of everything and the proprietor of everything. Knowledge of Krishna now means Bhaktam Sagatapsam Savalok Maisnam Sudam Savabhutyam Gatvaman Santamacham. Knowing that Krishna is the proprietor of all living entities, is the highest order enjoyer, the ultimate enjoyer, because he's the proprietor, he has the right to enjoy it. And he's a friend, best friend of all living entities, he's in the heart of every living entity. So that's the position of Krishna, knowledge of Krishna. And then one should do one's work without desire for profit, according to the Isavasya principle. No desire for profit. The enjoyer is Krishna. I'm not a proprietor. Krishna is a proprietor. That without is the enjoyer. So he's the enjoyer. Therefore, we don't desire profit for ourselves. He's the proprietor, so I don't claim proprietorship. Is that clear? These are the Isavasya principle. And then free from lethargy, fight. That do your duty, do your work, Arjun. This is surrendering your work. That is acting without false ego. False ego means I'm the enjoyer and this belongs to me. So that's acting in Krishna consciousness without desire for profit, that the profit is for Krishna, not for us. And he's the proprietor and he's the Supreme Lord. I have knowledge of it. And then you perform devotional service. Prabhupada writes, this verse indicates the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. The Lord instructs that one become fully Krishna conscious to discharge as in a military discipline. And then the example is given here. The cashier may count millions of dollars of his employee, but he doesn't claim a cent for himself. Similarly, one who has to realize that nothing in the world belongs to my individual person, but everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. That is a Vasya principle. We have here Baladev Vidyabhushan, offering all activities to me, being fixed in the soul, without desire for results, without possessiveness, and without suffering, fight. That's Baladev. You should be devoid of the concept of being the doer. That's the point. Not thinking oneself the doer. If you think yourself the doer, you think yourself the enjoyer, you think yourself the proprietor. No, one must see oneself as a servant, depending on the king's actions according to the king's order. You should perform your actions according to my order, without a desire, with a desire to teach the people. That he said before. That the cashier may count millions of dollars for his employee, but he does not claim a cent for himself. So no lethargy. So someone brings $50,000 to the bank. The cashier is not happy. It's from the bank, he puts in. And if someone takes $100,000 from his account, he doesn't start crying. It belongs to the bank. He gives it. He gives it. No sentimentality. It's from everything belongs to Krishna in that sense. So here, reflections. What are my experience when in the past I acted selfishly to attain fruitive results? Was my experience like them? That yeah.
For me, it's very difficult to understand that I'm not the doer because when I'm thinking of an action I want to perform, then I'm seeing this argument of this, what is for this action or against this.
Yeah, you forget Krishna.
Yeah, because I'm doing it.
Yeah, because you are doing it for millions of lives. And that is still your material nature. So it's very difficult to act according to that. That's called in Maya. That's Maya. That a devotee asks, Sita Prabhupada, thank you. Without you, I would have been in Maya. Prabhupada replied, you are always in Maya. And that is our position. We must be honest. Always in Maya. Yes. So now we come, Krishna has taught us how to act in Krishna consciousness in this verse 30, which we just discussed, and is the most essential verse of the Bhagavad Gita that we just discussed. Krishna said in the purport, this verse indicates the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. So acting in Krishna consciousness according to this verse means doing your work for Krishna, surrender your work to Krishna. And that means knowing that Krishna is a controller, knowing that Krishna is the proprietor and the enjoyer. Thus, not wanting enjoyment for oneself, but for Krishna, not wanting proprietorship, but knowing Krishna is a proprietor. And that is acting without false ego that we have discussed. And now we come to this last section of this Bhagavad Gita. Instead going to all these things, I will give you a summary of what comes, and then go to the slides. It's better you listen, because when I read, it may be too philosophical and you get carried away on that. So after saying this, that Krishna yes, that he will say, yes, one who follows these teachings in text 30, that he comes free from his karma, is not bind. But one who does not follow this, he will be in ignorance, befooled, Krishna says, and ruined in everything what he wants to do. Nothing will work out, Krishna. And that's the material world. But then, yes, that so one should act with knowledge of this. But yes, everyone has his nature, Krishna says. And you must act according to your material nature, material swadharma. You do your duty, but you do it in that way that you surrender your work to me. You don't think yourself you're the proprietor, and don't think yourself the enjoyer. And you know you do it for the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a servant. But on that path, there are two obstacles, Krishna says, and that is raga and dvesha, attachment and aversion, likes and dislikes. That these are obstacles, because that is the test. Do we have likes and dislikes? Attachment to things and aversion to things in this world. Aversion is the same obstacle as attachment. It's just negative. Attachment and aversion, Krishna says, are obstacles of the path of spiritual advancement. Because dislikes and dislikes makes one identify with the body. I like to give pleasure to the body, and I don't want pain of the body. I'm averse to pain. I want pleasure. That is the conditioned nature. That shows if we have this attachment, we can understand how conditioned we are. And therefore, Arjuna, you should do your duty in that way and not do the duty of others. And then Arjuna says, this attachment and aversion, Krishna, that it's very difficult to overcome, he says, his attachment and aversion. Because he's attached to Bhishma Dev, he's averse to killing them. That's so. I would like to follow what you say, Krishna, but there's a force greater than me that makes me act according to this attachment and aversion. What is this force? And Krishna replies, Kama isha krodha icha, rajaguna samudra masana mabhavna vidyamaya varna. It is lust, the Arjuna, born from wrath, coming from anger. And that comes from the mode of passion. That's the enemy number one, Arjuna. That it covers it covers the soul, this lust, the knowledge of the soul, like a child is covered by the womb of the mother, or like a mirror is covered by dust, or like fire is covered by smoke. Our Acharya says, yes, the child covered by the womb is very very dense covering. It's like the trees and the plants, they are covered like that. And the mirror and the dust, it's like the animals. If a mirror is complete full of dust, you cannot see yourself. So the animals cannot understand who they are. And fire and smoke is like the human form of life. Human form of life. That we can remove the smoke, and then we have the fire of Krishna consciousness. But you have to know how. So Krishna said, it covers the consciousness of the soul. He said, Avritam Jnanam Etina. Avritam means covering. Avritam Jnanam Etina. Jnana Etana, the eternal knowledge of the soul, is covered. Avritam. Avritam Jnanam Etina. Jnana Nityavarna. Therefore, it's your eternal enemy. Because under the influence of this enemy, you want sense gratification, duspranana lenacha. That this after Jnana Jnana Nityavarna, Kama Rupena Kantya duspranana lenacha. This Kama Rupa, this lust in the form of lust, the soul is covered. And it makes you strive for fulfillment of desires to satisfy the body. But you will never be satisfied. Arjuna said, enemy is a Kshatriya, a military man, and he has heard the word enemy. He's asking Krishna, where is this enemy? And how can I kill this enemy? That's a very important question. Krishna says this enemy is in the indriyas, the senses, the mano, the mind, the buddhi, the intelligence, adhisthanam in the body, that there, this enemy of lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. But Arjuna wants to know, how can I kill this enemy? First, Krishna says you must know you must regulate the senses. And then you have to kill this destroyer of knowledge. But to kill him, this destroyer of knowledge, you must know that the senses are higher than the object of the senses. Higher than the senses is the mind. It's more subtle and more powerful. And higher than the mind is the intelligence. And so the intelligence, and higher than the intelligence is the soul. So Krishna tells him, the soul must control the intelligence must control the mind, and the mind must control the senses. And then it is controlled. But control means, first, the intelligence must be fed with transcendental knowledge. The intelligence must know how to act as a spirit soul. So you must have transcendental knowledge to act as a spirit soul. Therefore, you must hear from the spiritual master, hear Bhagavad Gita. So that's the beginning to control. You must have knowledge how to act as a spirit soul. You must know you are a spirit soul, not a body. You must know that Krishna is the supreme. You must know that your natural activity of a soul is acting according to this Isavasya principle, serving the Lord and not trying to exploit. So you must have transcendental knowledge. Therefore, then what's the title of the next chapter? Transcendental knowledge. Therefore, Krishna will explain transcendental knowledge. So with transcendental knowledge, then when we hear that, the soul gets faith, become attached to this knowledge of Krishna, and pushes the intelligence with desire. Yes, you must follow that. The soul is in control. And then the intelligence directs the mind and the senses. You should follow Krishna's instructions. You do this, that, and that according to this transcendental knowledge. And by that, in that way, you can conquer this enemy lust. So that's the summary of this section. Just to get a good picture what's happening here. Now we are going again quickly over these verses. 334. I read first 31 and 32, 33. Yeme matamidam nityam anutishtati manava shradavanta nasuyantu muchante te pikarmapi. Those persons will execute their duties according to my injunctions and will follow this teaching faithfully without envy, become free from the action, from the bondage of fruitive actions. So if you act according to this principle explained in the previous verse, acting, surrendering your works, knowing I'm the supreme proprietor and not thinking yourself the proprietor, knowing that I'm the enjoyer of all sacrifices. We are not the enjoyer of anything in this world. We are the servant of Krishna, giving Krishna's enjoyment. Then that's acting as a servant of Krishna without false ego. If you do that, you become free from you come free from the reactions of material nature. But if you disregard these teachings, yet favor abasayunto nanutistis the mematon savagyan vimudamstam vidinashtan ashetsata. But those out of envy disregard these teachings who do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled. So, if you don't follow my teaching, Krishna said, you will be punished by the laws of nature. That there is punishment for disobedience to the order of the Supreme Executive. So, there is certainly punishment. A disobedient person, however great he may be, is ignorant of his own self and of the Supreme Brahman, Paramatma, and the personality of Godhead, due to a vacant heart. Therefore, there is no hope of perfection of life for him. Text 33. Satri samshastate svasya Pragate jnana vanapi pragatim yanti bhutani nishra kim karashati. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from three modes. What can repression accomplish? So this principle in verse 30, to act without false ego, or without sense of proprietorship, without thinking oneself the enjoyer, for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. If one must do that by using his material nature, one's psychophysical nature, because that is the gift of God we got in this world. And we must act according to our nature, not contrary to it. That, let's say, mostly we should act according to our nature. Our main service should be according to our nature. Otherwise, we cannot do it for long. And that's what Krishna says here. What can repression accomplish? Unless Arjuna is a Kshatriya and he has to fight. That is his life. That is a Kshatriya. Unless one is situated on the transcendental platform of Krishna consciousness, he cannot get free from the influence of material nature. So you must act. If you are not liberated, you must act according to human nature. It is impossible to get out of entanglement of Maya simply by theoretical knowledge. You must act. Academically, one may be very learned, but because of his long association with material nature, he is in bondage. Krishna consciousness helps one to get out of the material entanglement, even though one may be engaged in prescribed duties in terms of material existence. Therefore, without being fully Krishna conscious, one should not give up his occupational duty. It is better to be situated on one's position to try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. That is the, Prabhupada explains this as the dovetail principle. In carpentry, you have two pieces of wood. One has holes in it and the other something comes out and it fits perfectly in the two pieces of wood fit perfectly. So our material nature and Krishna's service, we have to connect. And it's one of the functions of why we need a living spiritual master. He helps us to make that connection according to your situation, because your situation is very particular. The scriptures only describe principles, these details, how to do it. The spiritual master must help. And why can a spiritual master help? Because he has done it successfully in his life. He has done it. And he knows the obstacles and the challenges. And he can advise you how to do that. That is an important principle. Text 34. Indriya Shakti Raga Dvesha Vyavastita Tayona Vashamagacha Tasya Sha Paripantino. In these first three Sanskrit terms, you should remember. Paripantino is obstacle. And what are the two obstacles in spiritual life? It's raga and dvesha, attachment and aversion. That's our big fight to get over that. These are principles to regulate attachment. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Srila Prabhupada in a purport writes that, yes, there is the vivaha, sacrifice, marriage. Marriage is there because sexual attachment in that way is regulated within the boundaries of the scriptures. But if a man feels attracted to his wife, but he may feel attracted also to other women, he should curb that attraction and control it. Otherwise, it will create havoc. These are obstacles. Of course, that is also for the other side, men to women. It's the same problem. So therefore, Krishna concludes, you do your duty as a Kshatriya. Don't engage in others' duty. You cannot repress your nature. Use your nature in Krishna consciousness. And this verse is mentioned twice in Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the 18th chapter and here in text 35. Shreya Swadharma Vivuna, Paradharma Svanustitas, Swadharma Nidanam, Shreya Paradharma Bhavaya. It is far better to discharge one prescribed duties, though faultily, than another's duty perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another path is dangerous. So we have to cleanse the heart in a gradual process. It cannot be abrupt. we have to use our nature in the service of Krishna, our psychophysical natures. That we have on the screen desire and hatred. Desire and attachment and aversion. What is attachment in Sanskrit? Yeah. And aversion and an obstacle, Sanskrit, paripantino. Paripantino. Desire and hatred are like thieves. So here is a thief on the screen, standing in front of the traveler on the road. Attachment and repulsion are firmly fixed in each of the sense objects. So it's related to the sense objects. That is Arjuna's sense objects is Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya. One should not come under the control of attachment and repulsion. They are the two obstacles. So it's not that we just say, it feels good, let's do it. No, that's the mind. That's very dangerous, this philosophy. But yeah.
The blocks are in the cut.
Please?
These blocks are in the cut.
In what? I don't know.
These blocks.
Blocks?
These blocks are in
the heart. The heart, yeah. That in the heart or in the mind, that's where they are. One should not come under the control of attachment and repulsion. There's the conditioned soul, the senses, their perception comes into the mind, and the sense say to the mind, we want sense gratification. We just went to that street or the restaurant and it smells good, and we want to eat this and all that. And the mind said yes. And the conditioned soul then uses the intelligence to make plans. So the intelligence becomes under control of the mind. It should be out of otherwise. To fulfill material plans. And that's the conditioned state. The devotee is different. It controls with his transcendental knowledge, his mind and sense, engaged in the service of Krishna. That's he's not under control of attachment of repulsion of the mind. So there are these two obstacles. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are not really elected to engage in material sense gratification, but those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. What are the attachment and aversions I struggle with? How to overcome these obstacles? So that's a reflection. That, it is better to perform one's duty even fully than another's duty perfectly. It is better to die being situated in one's own duties. Performing another's duties is a cause of misfortune. It's acting against your nature. Destructions in the course of performing one's duty is better to perform another's duty. Performing another's duty is dangerous. But anyway, this is the story of Ekalavya. Ekalavya, that thinking he was a Sudra or a Brahmin, I don't know, but he wanted to be to become a Kshatriya. And he wanted to learn from Dronacharya. Dronacharya rejected him. He made a deity of Dronacharya and worshipped the deity, and he got all the knowledge, some way or another, and he became expert, better than Arjuna. that equilibrium. But then Dronacharya went to see him and said, "From whom did you learn it?" And said, "Is that from you?" I mean, deity, and he explained. "Oh, then you have to pay dakshina." Dakshina, pay your, and Eklavya said, "What do you want?" "I want your right thumb." And he cut his thumb and gave it to him. By that he could not string the bow anymore. Anyway, that's a whole story. So, as long as one is on a material platform, one must perform his duty according to the modes of material nature. And at the same time, he must have a full sense of Krishna consciousness. So the question is, do I act according to my psychophysical nature on the order of the bona fide spiritual master? Question. Now, that 37, verse 36, Arjuna asks a question. Atakena payuktam yam papam charati purusha anichan apivasnya balat ivan yoyita. Arjuna said to the son of Vishnu, by what is one impelled to sinful acts even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? At the end of the problem, although the living entity sometimes does not want to act in sin, is still forced to act. Sinful actions are not, however, impelled by the supersoul within, but they are due to another cause, as the Lord explains in the next verse. And the cause is here. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kama Isha Kodai Characha Suna Kuna Samudbhava Masama Papna Vityanamiya Paranam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world." Purport. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. That's the problem. That further Prabhupada says, therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If therefore the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. Therefore, the devotees live in the mode of goodness. Everything we do should be in the mode of goodness. Further, that the Lord gives facility to the conditioned soul to fulfill lusty propensities. And when completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, living entities begin to inquire about his real position. It doesn't seem to work out after many lives. Therefore, lust is transformed into love for the Supreme, or transformed into Krishna consciousness. In other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. At the end, Lord induces Arjuna to engage his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Use your anger in the service of Krishna, he says. The Lord said here, Baladev, it is lust and then anger arising from the mode of rajas. Know this as the great devourer, the greatest simple one, the enemy. True, but anger is not different from karma. This karma is lust. When obstructed by some living being, becomes anger, just as milk becomes yogurt by the addition of acidic culture. So the yogurt, milk becomes yogurt that similarly, yes, that lust becomes anger. Vishwanath. This lust appearing in different forms becomes visible as anger. This means that lust being obstructed by someone transforms into anger. Lust arises from the mode of passion, and from lust in the mode of passion, arises anger in the mode of ignorance that we heard before. That 226, 262. Yeah, Dayante. Yeah, Dayate Vamsa Sangastes Vachayate Sangyate Kamakam Kod Vichayate Dayate Visyatamsam. That's how explains how lust turns into anger. We learned that before. But after a fulfillment of desire, this desire should be finished. Now, this lust is a great devourer. It is impossible to satisfy the desire, expectations of desire. Impossible. Both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman burned the city of Ravan, where his tail was burned in fire. Arjuna engaged his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Then lust and wrath become our friends instead of our enemies. Prabhupada was once in Mayapur. His quarters were just finished, and there was only the Lotus building in Mayapur. At that time already we engaged security guards, Bengali security guards, who made a tour, and at a certain time they had to be at a certain place. And Prabhupada came before his room in Lotus building, and he looked at his watch and said, this guard should be here now. I said, get me this guard. And Prabhupada was in his quarters, and Navayogendra was there. And the guard came in, and Prabhupada became very angry and started to go to shout in Bengali. And Navayogendra said, Navayogendra Swami, and Prabhupada was so angry, I was trembling from the fear when he was, but then the guard went out and he smiled, and the anger did not affect him at all. He used the anger just as a drama to instruct his. There are other instances with Prabhupada and his anger. Very interesting. Reflections. Do I live in the mode of goodness? Can I use my anger and wrath in the service of Krishna? What are the causes of my dissatisfaction? It's all answered by these verses. 39. Verse 38. Dumenavriateva niratasha malinacha yato benavito garbas tatadenedem avitam. As fire is covered by smoke, so this is the human form of life. As a mirror is covered by dust, these are the animals. And as the embryo is covered by the womb, these are the trees. The living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of lust. That's explained in the purport. But then 39. Avitam jnanam etina jnana nitya varnam kamarupena kantya duspranana lenacha. Thus the wise living entity pure consciousness becomes covered by its eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied, which burns like fire. The purpose. It is said in the Manu Samhita that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by constantly supplying fuel. Feelings of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. Shall I repeat it again? Feelings of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. The Baladev, the knowledge of the jiva is covered by this constant enemy in the form of lust, which is like an unsatisfied fire. Just as it is impossible to satisfy a fire by offerings, cannot be satisfied by enjoyment. Cannot be satisfied. Verse 39. Yeah. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex. And thus, this material world is called Maitunya Agara, Srila Prabhupada says, or the shackles of sex life. The criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Lust is a symbol of ignorance by which a living entity is kept within the material world. Do I want to remove the shackles of sex life that keep me in ignorance? And 40. So now he will tell Arjuna where the enemy is to be found. Indriyana manovidir asya disthana muchyate itervimacye sakhyano vittadena. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting place of this lust. To them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So the enemy has captured different strategic positions, Prabhupada writes. The mind is the center of all activities of the senses. And thus when we hear about sense objects, the mind generally becomes a reservoir of all ideas of sense gratification. And as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. Next, the intelligence department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. Intelligence is immediate next door neighbor of the spirit soul. Lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire false ego and identify with matter, and thus with the mind and senses. The spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying material senses and mistakes true happiness. So that is what happens. The senses, mind, and intelligence are the seeds of this lust. By this lust covering, the knowledge of the soul bewilders the soul. Bewilderment means that lust makes the jiva disinclined to know Atma and inclined to enjoy the sense objects. Makes every time everyone thinks in this world, enjoy, you live only once. That's Maya speaking. That's very fine. That forget who you are the body. That has to be enjoyed. And the sense objects, starting with sound, are the provinces ruled by the king called lust. Lust bewilders the jiva by covering knowledge, using the senses, mind, and intelligence. Lusty intelligence influences spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter and thus with the mind and senses. The spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistakes this for true happiness. Reflections. What awareness do I have of the enemy of lust sitting in my own mind, intelligence, and senses? How do I know? Good. 41. Tasmatvam indriyam yado niyamya bharatashabha papmanam payenam jnana vijnanam nashanam. Therefore, Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of lust, regulating the sense and slay this destroyer of knowledge. and realization. So Krishna, Lord advises Arjuna to regulate the senses from the very beginning, to curb this enemy. That's so at the end, the last paragraph, Bhagavad Gita gives us that general and specific knowledge of the self. Living entities are part and parcels of the Lord. Therefore, they are simply to serve the Lord. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So from the very beginning of life, one has to learn Krishna consciousness, and therefore one may become fully Krishna conscious and act accordingly. That from the very beginning of life. Lust is the only perverted reflection of the love of God, which is natural for every living entity. But if one is educated in Krishna consciousness from the very beginning, that natural love of God cannot deteriorate into lust. When love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulative principles of devotion service. So from any stage of life or from time of understanding is urgency. One can regulate the senses in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord, and turn it into lust, turn lust into love of God, the highest perfectional stage of human life. So, Baldev Vidyabhushan, therefore, in the beginning, regulating the senses by Nishkam Karma Yoga. O best of the Bharata lineage, kill this demon, which destroys scriptural knowledge and realization. So that is the demon here, and that is Saint Michael, who is on the top. And if you go to Brussels and you have the very old medieval market, high on top you have this Michael is killing this demon. that's coming from there, from the Christian. But that's the demon we have to kill, this lust. That through heart and mind, through. That's not correct. Should be. Anyway. Through heart and mind, change can be experienced only by surrendering to transforming power of God's love. Yeah. When love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. One can become Krishna conscious and turn lust into love of God. Who am I? Yeah. Reflections. What prevents me to assimilate scriptural knowledge and realize my position as Atman, an eternal servant of the Lord Krishna? It's lust. The last verse, that Evam buddhi prambhutva samsatyatmanatma yeishatra mahabahom kama rupam durashadam. Thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses and intelligence of mighty armed Arjuna, one should study the mind by deliberate its spiritual intelligence, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So the intelligence based of transcendental knowledge should, by the direction of the soul, engage the mind and senses in Krishna's service. And do that always. And that solves the problem that Srila Prabhupada gave once a lecture somewhere in America in a temple, and the devotee asked at the end of the class, Prabhupada, do you have lust in your mind? Quite a question to ask. Prabhupada was humble and said, yes. Of course, we know he was pure. But then a little later that day, he went outside and in the car to have the devotees would drive him to another temple. The devotee who asked that question in the morning opened the door for the car for Prabhupada. Prabhupada looked at him and said, yes, I have lust in my mind, but I have no time for it. No, we are always engaged in Krishna consciousness. That's the point here. That desire for overloading and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and the intelligence. So by gradual development of Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in the transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed towards one's pure identity, acting as a pure soul, not as the body. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence, and that training comes into the next chapter, transcendental knowledge. Here Baladev Vidyabhushan says, thus realizing that the soul is distinct from the intelligence, fixing the mind in the soul by the fixed intelligence, destroy the enemy in the form of lust, which is difficult to conquer, O my Jant Arjuna. When the soul is firm, then it controls senses, mind, intelligence, and lust. Prabhupada, desire for loading or for overloading and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and intelligence. Reflections. Can you be happy if you are bitten by the snake of lust and your mind and senses are uncontrolled? Good luck. So that's the end. I'm a little worried about Dr. Lewis, because this is a very important section. If you have missed this section, you miss the essence of everything by Bhagavad Gita. So I hope he will be able to see the recording. Any questions? Yes?
Dragon Veshak,
Right.
this is a Bharata Maharaj. Could be an example of this Raga on Veshak.
Well, Bharat Maharaj, he went to the forest and he gave up all his attachment. His attachment and aversion, he gave everything up, his kingdom, his family, everything. And he had something to give up. Everything he gave up, he went to the forest. And he performed his sadhana and he was good on his way. He was nearly bhava, nearly love of Godhead. But then he made one error. He became attached to a deer. Attachment is okay, but he was over-attached, extreme attachment. And he gave up his sadhana, his spiritual practice. Still, Krishna protected him. He became a deer, but he had still the consciousness of an elevated devotee, even in the body of a deer. But it's a lesson for us to learn. Never give up your sadhana. Never become extremely attached. Attachment is there, but extreme is not good. And certainly, it should certainly not lead to give up your sadhana. That's what we have to learn. Important. Good. Yeah. Yeah, I became attached to that deer. And he was against the deer. He was afraid that the deer would be hurt and so on. Aversion, attachment was there. Good. Hare Krishna. Then we see each other at 4 o'clock and we will hear the